Thank you so much, Faith. Hello, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be here with you. I'm very, very happy to be joining Sangha Live today. This is my first time joining Sangha Live, and it's a very deep pleasure to be here. I would love to start, if possible, for anybody who would be willing to turn your camera on for just a few minutes so we can actually see each other. I love that we can do this in the chat where we can type in where we're coming from so we get a sense of our Sangha today. And if we could get a sense of each other also. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you for doing this. It's so nice. And you probably are seeing people that you know, and take a look at each other. Nobody knows who's looking at whom when, but just the ability to take each other in and see who is coming to practice today is such a beautiful opportunity. And I like to keep my Zoom monitor on gallery view because it makes me feel like I'm in the room with you. Instead of having any one, I don't keep it on speaker view because I'm not watching myself speak, but I really do love to have as many people who are willing to have your video on during our time together as possible. It makes me think I'm here with you. And we are in each other's homes or wherever we're calling from. And isn't this extraordinary that we can do this worldwide? It's truly, it's such a gift. It gives me a little bit of chills knowing that we're coming from all over the place to share our hearts, to settle our minds, to steady our lives, to inquire, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be alive in this time? So, as Faith said, the way our morning will go is we'll begin shortly with a meditation, and then I'll offer some Dharma thoughts, and then we'll have plenty of time to talk with each other. And I love group discussion. I think it's one of our most beautiful ways that we engage with the Dharma is to talk with each other. So if I say something that stimulates a question for you, write it down if you think you might forget. Just take a note for yourself so when it comes time for the Q&A, we won't forget it. I really want to hear from as many people as we can. So that said, let's move into our meditation. We'll be here till about 1:30, maybe a little bit more, right around there. And inviting you to find a posture that works well in your body. If you'd like to close your eyes, close your eyes. If not, just having a gentle, soft gaze downward. Softening, opening, and listening. So much that's our practice, is to pause and tune in, sense what's here, to be here. Begin by noticing the places your body is connected to whatever it's connected to. Furniture, the floor, a cushion. Whether you're seated or standing or reclining, noticing those points of connection. And importantly, no forcing. Inviting the body to find its own posture that feels most natural, most comfortable, but also attentive. You might hold just enough energy in the back body to support this wakefulness, this presence and attention, and softening the whole front of the body, from the top of the head, down the face, the throat, torso, arms and legs. And from this awareness of the body here at this time, in just the posture it is, noticing the breathing. The breath comes and goes. And in the noticing, it's not necessary to change it in any way. Simply breathe and know you're breathing, aware of the in-breath, aware of the out-breath. The beautiful writer Eddie Hillesum wrote, "Sometimes the most important thing in a whole day is the rest we take between two deep breaths, or turning inwards for just a few minutes." Letting this be a practice of restful presence. The first principle in the Abhidhamma, the Buddhist psychology, is to see the inner nobility and beauty of all beings, including ourselves. Can we meet ourselves in this time of meditation with this quality of goodness that's here? It's already here. This quality of dignity, nobility. Many Buddhist texts begin with this beautiful invocation. O nobly born, that's us. O nobly born, you who are the sons and daughters of the awakened ones, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Remember who you are, the luminous mind, the goodness of your heart. Trust it, return to it. It is home. So finding that place that feels most natural for you to rest your awareness, to rest your attention, be it the breath, right where you feel your breath most, maybe where the body responds to the breathing. Maybe it's the body itself. Placing your attention where it makes most sense for you and staying there. And of course, when the mind wanders, as it naturally will, and you notice it, come back and begin again with a kind, gentle persistence, being here. And we'll sit quietly. For many, there's a natural tendency, a habitual tendency towards some holding or constriction or tightening in the body that happens without even noticing it. So scan gently down through your body and notice if there's a place that is tight or holding that can be opened, softened any amount. Perhaps it's loosening the jaw, dropping the shoulders, relaxing the belly, the hands. Simply notice and invite that area to soften any amount. As we continue to sit, notice any amount of quiet, ease, and stillness that might be here, and welcoming that quality of peace, of ease, of stillness that arises when we come into this beautiful practice of being still. Letting that accompany you. Let it be in the forefront. Even if the mind has other things going on, notice any amount of ease or peace. Let it be here. Sensing into the body and noticing anywhere in the body that feels relaxed, at ease, comfortable, any place in the body that you get that sense of relaxation, that it's not a problem, no tension. It can be very small, any size. Just sensing in and seeing if there's a place like that and touching into that quality of ease and comfort. And if you like, imagine it spreading and filling the body. Just as water follows the path of least resistance, as does this quality of ease, comfort, even refuge, inviting it to spread through the body, all the way out to its edges. Breathing here. and aware of one another, that we are all engaging in this practice together all over the world, literally. And as we invite and open the channels in our own bodies for this ease and peace to spread, and we do this together, perhaps it goes beyond the edges of our body. And we create this very large field in which all this suffering can be held. Our deepest wish is that all beings be free of suffering. And we do this by expanding the peace that we cultivate in ourselves and reflect it to one another, making space for one another. This is a poem called Chimera by Julia Fehrenbacher. It's a brave thing to step onto the field, into the arena, to each day, turn toward blank page, empty canvas, to choose to meet this beautiful, broken world all over again, to sit inside the mess, the mayhem, the I don't know. It's a brave thing to rise up when you've hit the ground hard, to sit still when fear wants you to pick it up, pin it down, to let dust settle instead of hurrying to wipe it clean. It's a brave thing to forget the filters, to forgive the unforgivable, to let hurt be the hand that heals, to breathe until you feel your bigness, to soften, to open, to listen. In Rwanda, the word chimera means be strong, have courage. In the middle of the mess, the mayhem, the I don't know, it's a brave thing to slip off each story of smallness, to let hurt be the hand that heals, to take the next true step, even when. Coming back into the body, and listening for the sound of the bell. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but if you can't, imagine it. And coming back. Could you hear the bell? Nope. Okay. I have to change the setting. Let me see if you can hear it now. You get it now? Okay. It's a nice bell, so I'll ring it. Okay. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately and reflecting on the path of the Bodhisattva. Who is the Bodhisattva? How are we the Bodhisattva? What is this path? What is this choice that we make every single time we come back into this practice that is a commitment to cultivating this clear mind and the wise heart and the courage that it takes to do that? I think that we do fundamentally three things in our lives with each other. We companion each other, we console each other, and we celebrate each other. And this is the path of the Bodhisattva, one who commits to acting for the well-being of others, of all beings. And I like thinking about it as companioning, consoling, and celebrating. Because really what we're doing is connecting. And the path of the Bodhisattva says, I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to keep showing up and showing up. And this practice trains us to do this. So you may be familiar with the traditional Bodhisattva vow that says there are different iterations. This one comes from Upaya Zen Center, from Roshi Joan Halifax's center. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. So that sounds pretty impossible, doesn't it? It's so big. And I think it would be easy to be overwhelmed by the vow. Who in our contemporary world can take on something like that? Henry Moore, the sculptor, said, "The secret of life is to have a task, something you devote your entire life to, something you bring everything to every minute of the day for the rest of your life. And the most important thing is, it must be something you cannot possibly do." Now, doesn't that sound nuts? It must be something you cannot possibly do. But when it all comes together, I think for me, as I've been practicing with this and inquiring, really wanting to understand more about this path or the role of the Bodhisattva, it comes down to this. The world is suffering, and it's our job to meet it. That's it. So maybe, the expansive vows that feel unattainable, it's just a direction that we go. Because the truth is, and we know this, that there's such a vast amount of suffering. It's everywhere, it's in us, it's outside of us, it's in our communities, it's in the world. And somehow this Bodhisattva knows how to keep showing up. And we do it to the extent that we can. And I think that being on this path of practice in the Dharma, we are all bodhisattvas. And that doesn't mean that others who are not on this path of practice aren't bodhisattvas. Anybody who shows up and says, I'm here to help, how can I help? This is what the bodhisattva is, I think. So I came across a very interesting teaching on this. Peter Skilling is a scholar, and he has a book that came out a couple of years ago called Questioning the Buddha, a selection of 25 sutras. And I love that phrase, questioning the Buddha, because I think one of the most profound things for me that the Buddha said, or I believe he said, is ehi passiko. Go find out for yourself how things work. Go find out what are the causes of greed and ill will and delusion, and stop doing it. Stop doing those things. And go find out what brings about generosity, non-greed, non-ill will, compassion, metta, and clarity of mind, and go in that direction. So to question the Buddha gives us that agency to say, I'm not so sure about this, I'm going to find out. Because he didn't say, I think he said, I have found this to be true. You don't have to believe me, but go find out for yourself. And that word, ehi passiko, it is translated, my understanding, as encouraging inquiry, encouraging investigation. And I find that whenever there is a teacher, an elder, a mentor who gives me the message that says, you can do this, I trust you. Go inquire, go investigate. That's enlivening. That gives me a lot of agency. So Questioning the Buddha, title of the book, it's great. But in there is a teaching that the Buddha said there are 4 teachings that bodhisattvas should practice as long as we live. We should cultivate an aspiration for awakening as long as we live. We should maintain spiritual friendships as long as we live. We should practice patience, openness, and kindness as long as we live. And we should spend some portion of time dwelling in the wilderness as long as we live. And one of the things I was struck by with this is the translation of should, because it's a prescription. The Buddha said, this is what should be done, like those first lines of the Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by those who are skilled in goodness and know the path of peace. And when somebody like the Buddha says should, he didn't say could. Like, this is really what we need to do. The difference of could is, yeah, okay, I could do that. But this is more of an imperative. So let's take this apart a little bit. The first one, Bodhisattvas should cultivate an aspiration for awakening as long as they live. So we're all here over and over again because I think we have an aspiration for awakening, deeper and deeper understandings of what it means to uproot greed, uproot ill will, and to cultivate this clear mind. Over and over and over again. And for me personally, I don't really know what the big awakening is. I don't know if it works like that. I think the way it works is that you've probably heard the expression, many moments, many times, where something happens and we wake up a little bit. We learn something a little bit deeper. It might be that we kind of knew it before, but now we really know it. And we know these things, we have these experiences that change us in a way that matters. Somebody just put in the chat, glimmers. Yeah, right? These glimmers that come in. Bhikkhu Bodhi said, just do two things. Begin and keep going. Begin and keep going. It's such a beautiful instruction. Okay, I can do that. And we begin over and over again, and we keep going every single time we come back to practice. And then we see how these practices are showing up in our everyday walking around lives. Because this is not something only for the cushion. And my hunch is that you know that really clearly, that this is something that permeates all the parts of our lives. So to uproot greed and ill will and delusion, it's so critically important, and we know the pain that is in our world now. And one of the ways that I have created my own Bodhisattva vow, and I encourage you to do the same thing if you're drawn to do that, is the commitment that I will not let hate take up residence in my heart. No matter what. Because it just degrades me, it just pollutes me, and it keeps my mind in delusion. And it doesn't mean that I don't have to do that over and over again, but that is my vow. I'm not going to do that. So you can think about that. What would be important for you? The second one, Bodhisattvas should maintain spiritual friendships as long as we live. So we know this, right? We take refuge in the Sangha. We know that we can't do this together, and that's why we're all here today. That we maintain this and we support each other and we support organizations that support Sanghas. This is how Dana shows up. We need each other, especially now, because we support this community in which awakening is possible. Rachel Naomi Raymond, who is a physician in Northern California, she says, perhaps the secret of living well is not in having all the answers, but pursuing unanswerable questions in good company. Isn't that beautiful? Pursuing unanswerable questions in good company. We are each other's good company, and we don't have to know the answers, but we wrestle and explore together because the Sangha is a trusted place. The third, Bodhisattvas should practice openness, kindness, and patience as long as we live. That's really a big one, isn't it? How do we keep cultivating openness, because when we get frightened, we tend to shut down. The heart gets armored, the mind closes, but our practice is over and over again to open. This commitment towards kindness is no small thing. It's a really big deal. Ajahn Sucitto, who is a monk in the Theravada tradition, he wrote a beautiful commentary on the paramis. It's called Crossing the Floods. And if you're interested in paramis, all the different heart practices, the perfections of the heart, it's a beautiful view. It's a really wonderful book. And so the way he talks about patience really struck me, and it changed my practice as I started practicing through this view. And here's what he says about patience. Patience is the kind of acceptance that acknowledges the presence of something without adding anything to it or covering it up. Right? We meet things just as they are. It's supported by the insight that when one's mind stops fidgeting, whining, and blaming, then suffering can be understood. Patience has the gut knowledge that recognizes that a problem or a pain is not something to run away from, get flustered by, or be self-pitying about. It has the wisdom to know that we have to prioritize the steps through which we can resolve suffering. So that's hard, right? We can get into the Four Noble Truths with that, because difficulty, challenge, pain is all inherent in our lives, and we pretty much want to get rid of it right away. So if we can apply a quality of abiding, of patience, of making more space for, we don't have to fix it right away, but we actually prioritize what needs to be done. It lets us rest in the experience. You've probably all heard the expression, right now it's like this. And it's tough because sometimes how it is right now is difficult. And then of course we don't want to miss the beauty, because right now it's like this could mean that this is a really good morning. This is a really good evening. I had a really nice day today. It could be any of those things, because that can exist within the suffering, and it does exist within the suffering. One of the most important things Ajahn Sucitto said that shifted me was patience relaxes the edges of time and becomes an occasion for spaciousness. Patience relaxes the edges of time to make space for something else to arise. And that is a very, maybe even radical way to think about what patience is, because it's oftentimes I think it's common to think of patience as a tightness, like I just got to grit my teeth until this is over. But what if we shift that to a wider being with this abiding, to really turning towards this is how it is right now. He says the specific quality of patience is to carry the heart through the turbulence of existence so that it no longer shakes, sinks, or lashes out. How critical is that? If we can have enough patience that we don't lash out. It's the restraint of holding the heart still in the presence of its suffering until it lets go of the ways in which it creates that suffering. To not be in contention with whatever is happening. And it takes work, it takes practice, it takes awareness, it takes intention. So I'm not saying any of this is easy. It's not. But that's why we keep coming back over and over again to train in this way of being. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, through kindness, through affection, through honesty, through truth and justice, toward all others, we ensure our own benefit. This is not a matter for complicated theorizing. It's a matter of common sense. And that is what I love about our practice so much. It is a matter of common sense. I am the primary recipient of all of my actions. And certainly my actions go far and wide. There's a big ripple effect, and we know this. This is karma. This is the interconnection. but I am the primary recipient of what I do. So again, through kindness, through affection, through honesty, through truth and justice towards all others, we ensure our own benefit, right? That's the thing. When we behave well, we benefit from that. And it's not complicated, it's common sense. And the fourth of these injunctions from the Buddha, Bodhisattvas should spend some portion of time dwelling in the wilderness as long as we live. This is true. And I'd like to broaden the definition of wilderness. You can think of wilderness as nature. Go outside, be with plants, be with trees, wherever you live, go outside and somehow touch nature. Because nature is healing. It is fundamentally healing, and we have such a reciprocal relationship with the natural world. But this is also talking about a kind of seclusion, I think. What about the wilderness inside of us? I remember when I first started practicing many years ago, I had this moment of realizing that there was such a vast inner wilderness, vast inner landscape that I was just beginning to get to know. And it was exciting. It was exciting because I felt like there's this whole path of practice that I can do for the rest of my life to continue to explore what it's like on the inside of me and how does that meet the outside of me. But we need quiet. We need to be in nature, sometimes for these parts of ourselves to come forward. So those are the four: to aspire towards awakening, to maintain spiritual friendships, to continually cultivate openness, kindness, and patience, and to connect with the wilderness inside and outside. So how do we do that? Because it's easy to say, well, this is what should be done. This is what the Buddha has said. And you might be thinking, okay, that sounds really good, but how am I going to do it? So I want to bring in the work of Zen peacemakers. Anybody familiar with Zen peacemakers? Some people. Okay, let me tell you about it. It's very interesting, and I encourage you to look them up. It's a beautiful nonprofit that is dedicated to making peace. And it was started by Roshi Bernie Glassman. And Roshi Bernie Glassman was Roshi Joan Halifax's teacher. And he is the one who in the 1994, he put together what are called bearing witness retreats for social action, to connect our contemplative practice with social action, engaged Buddhism. And there are three tenets of the Zen peacemakers: not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. Basically, cultivating the path of the Bodhisattva, seeing that the world is suffering and we must meet it. The mission and the vision of Zen peacemakers is to realize our connection, our oneness, and relieve suffering through contemplative social action. Spirituality and service are tools we use to help all beings find freedom regardless of race, religion, ability, gender, or nationality. And the Buddha said that in the Metta Sutta, omitting none. Omitting none. And this is our practice to figure out what that means, how to live in that way. To study othering, how does that work? So let's talk about these three tenets. Not knowing. You've probably heard Suzuki Roshi's teaching that says in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few. So how do we come into anything and not know? When we come together, can we come with that kind of beginner's mind, letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves and each other, how the world works? And of course, we are influenced by our conditioning. Of course, we can't help that. We see the world through our own filters, but this practice is helping us open up to what else might be true, to curiosity. Noticing what are those core limiting beliefs that we all have. beliefs that are baked in, that we just assume are true because that's our own conditioning, it's how we live. But are they core beliefs that limit our ability to be curious about others, to open to other ideas? Can we reframe a narrative? And in fact, there's a circuit in the brain that Richie Davidson discovered that is specific for reframing our outlook, that we actually can change how we view things. To ask what else is true. Because we know that many things can be true at the same time. There isn't one truth. Again, in the Metta Sutta, it says at the very end, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, is released from all addictive sense desires and is not born again into this world. That means, by not holding to fixed views, we have the ability to uproot greed and ill will and delusion. The Buddha even said, those who cling to their views go about the world annoying others. Those who cling to their views go about the world annoying others. So can we train in listening intently? This is our task. To be with another or ourselves and listen intently. Because when we do, so much opens up. The core limiting beliefs, we can suspend our loyalty to our own opinions for a while and to start asking what else might be true. And usually some compassion arises. Here's a short poem from Miller Williams called Compassion. Have compassion for everyone you meet, even if they don't want it. What seems conceit, bad manners, or cynicism is always a sign of things no ears have heard, no eyes have seen. You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone. We don't know. But what we do know about each other is that we all have our sorrows. We don't know what's going on for each other, but we can bet that our hearts have struggled. We've had difficulties, we've had joys. So how can we do anything but have compassion for each other? And this is the hard part. But that is our task. So that's the showing up and not knowing. Bearing witness. You know, Bernie Glassman, you may have heard of bearing witness retreats in the Zen tradition that he began. And he began doing this with, in New York City, I believe, where people would do bearing witness retreats by going out and living on the streets with people who live in homelessness as a way to experience what it's like to be them. And then he expanded that to taking retreats to Auschwitz and Birkenau. And those are still happening. To bear witness to the joy and the suffering of the world, to the practice of bearing witness is to see all aspects of situations, including our attachments and our judgments. And he says when we bear witness, we open up to the uniqueness of whatever is arising and meet it just as it is. And it strengthens our capacity to listen, allowing a more nuanced picture to arise. You know, so little is black and white. Maybe it's all nuance. It's all influenced by so many other things. And through the bearing witness, we start to really see how the three marks of existence works. The truth of dukkha, that everything is changing, impermanence, all the time. And we see our interconnection. We can't help but see it if we're really present. And when we see how these three poisons work of greed, ill will, and delusion. And I would also say that the other thing that happens in there is we start to get a much closer experience to the second foundation of mindfulness, Vedana, the experience of pleasant and unpleasant, or a little pleasant, a little unpleasant, sometimes thought of as neutral. We start seeing how these core limiting beliefs or our own experience, there are things that are fundamentally comfortable and uncomfortable for us, that we like, that we don't like. And this is a pre-verbal place, that even the idea for me as a Jewish person to sit a bearing witness retreat at Auschwitz is more than I can manage in anticipating what that would be like. That goes to the second foundation of mindfulness. There's something very core, pleasant, unpleasant, and then how does that influence my thinking and my actions? But bearing witness can also lead to joy, right? I mean, this is not all about what's difficult. We need to be present for our lives so we can be present for the beauty and the joy also. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. And that brings in, I mean, you can start to see, this is what happens for me, is I can start studying one part of the Dharma, and it leads to another, and another, and another. It's all completely connected. So when I think about bearing witness and being right here, I have to come back to my intention. I have to come back to the second factor of the Eightfold Path of wise intention, which is made up of three components: metta, compassion, and renunciation. That ability to just be, to release, to simplify, to not know, but to come with a kind heart. Pema Chodron, she says, if your everyday practice is to open to all of your emotions, to all of the people you meet, to all of the situations you encounter, without closing down, that's the key thing, trusting that you can do that, then that will take you as far as you can go, and then you'll understand all the teachings that anyone has ever taught. That's saying a lot. If your everyday practice is to open to all of your emotions, to all the people you meet, all of the situations you encounter without closing down, that's the key. Because we do close down, because we do get frightened, because it's not easy, because of dukkha. And we have a nervous system. Trauma is true. We do experience overwhelm. And so there is a pulling back that is natural. But when we train in this everyday practice, and this is the practice of the Bodhisattva, then that will take you as far as you can go, and you will understand all the teachings that anyone has ever taught, Pema assures us. And the third of these tenets from Zen peacemakers, taking action. Action that arises from not knowing, from bearing witness. And then Bernie says, it's impossible to predict what the action in any situation will be, or the timetable for when it'll arise, or what might result from it. The underlying intention is that the action that arises be a caring action, which serves everyone and everything, including yourself and the whole situation. So we could talk about another factor of the Eightfold Path, wise action, that teaches us and trains us in ethical alignment. The commitment to not cause harm, but to also study non-harming. What does that actually mean? So you can see how all of these things come together in this path of the Bodhisattva. It isn't a path of just showing up and working so hard that there's nothing left of you. It's wise action. It's the wise heart. It's the clear mind that we're cultivating. And it's hard, right? This is not easy. And we can't do it all ourselves. We have to do this with each other in community, repairing our broken world. There's a beautiful phrase in Hebrew, tikkun olam, the healing of the world. The 3rd century Rabbi Tarfon said, "It's not upon you to finish the work, nor are you free to desist from it." It's not upon you to finish the work, nor are you free to desist from it. So that's a really big injunction that says, you can't do it all yourself, but you can't stop. And that is the path of the Bodhisattva. We keep going, begin and keep going. And lastly, and we'll end here, I was listening to an interview with Rebecca Solnit, and Rebecca Solnit is a brilliant thinker, and she's written many, many books, and she's very active in the world of climate, and how do we show up in the world of the climate crisis. And she's done a lot of work with Roshi Joan Halifax, and she was interviewed for Tricycle, the magazine, and they were talking about how do we meet these really difficult times. And then she was remembering many years ago, it's probably almost 20 years ago, when there was this huge hurricane in New Orleans, Katrina it was called, and thousands of people died, and the levees broke in this storm. And what she says about it is, get your boat in the water. You're not going to rescue everybody, but it's not your job to do it all by yourself. And rescuing somebody is deeply meaningful, even if you can't rescue everybody. Nobody rescued everybody, and a lot of people rescued somebody. So get your boat in the water. And this is what we're doing. Every time we come to practice, we're actually putting our boats in the water. We really are. Because we're training in showing up. And that's what I have for you. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for your kind attention. And we have plenty of time to talk with each other. And before we move into the Q&A, I just want to mention again what a delight it is to be here, to have been invited by Sangha Live to give a talk and to share some of how I approach this practice that's so dear to me. And we ask for your support. We ask for your support in this reciprocal relationship, that we can't do this if you don't show up, and you need us to show up so we can have this kind of experience together. So any amount of dana that you can offer for us, I am very grateful, and so is Sangha Live. So thank you for your consideration on that. Okay, let's talk. You are welcome to raise your Zoom hand or put a question in the chat.
Heidi, there was already a question about the name of the first poem that you shared in the meditation.
Oh, sure. Julia Fehrenbacher. And that is spelled Fehrenbacher. Julia. And the name of it is Komera. Komera. So have you given much thought to the Bodhisattva? You know, somebody, let's get our conversation going. Feel free to just type in any kind of reflection. And it doesn't have to be a question, and I mean that. It can be, you know, my hunch is there's a lot of wisdom here. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, let's see. So much awareness of when I close down, especially lately. So impacted by the war in Israel. Yes, Sheila. We are so impacted by this war. Every other war. And this is a level of violence in all ways for all people experiencing it that is incredibly painful. And Ukraine, and Darfur. This is really happening. And so by committing over and over again to what else might be true, can we open the mind? Sometimes we can't. noticing the pain, because that's true, but also making a commitment to not make it worse, to not let that kind of ill will take up residence. I sense my bandwidth failing my deepest intentions for living. Yeah, let's talk about bandwidth. I think that's really, really important. And then we'll go to Hunter's comment. The nervous system has a bandwidth. And if you're sensing overwhelm in the body, in the heart, listen to that. This is really important. And to pull back your exposures. Because I don't know if you're watching a lot of news or reading a lot of commentary, but it's everywhere and it's hard to avoid. And I really would support you in being very, very limited in your consumption of social media, of all kinds of media, because it is so painful, and in many ways, we don't have the power to change what is happening there. We're not on the inside of the government, unless maybe some of you are, and I don't want to make an assumption. But to sense the bandwidth failing the deepest intentions, the way to come back to that is to limit exposure, to come back to your deepest intentions and believe them, trust them, and give yourself time to rest. We need time to rest. I don't have the magic answer for this, but I know for me, I have needed to limit my exposure to a lot of different kind of media because it's so deeply upsetting and it makes it really hard for me to show up in other ways. And the Bodhisattva shows up, right? But the Bodhisattva doesn't show up at the cost of one's own ability to function. It's all very deeply overwhelming and insurmountable, but I'm learning to cultivate meeting it head on and being brave to repeatedly put my boat in the water. That gives me tears. Hunter's comment, can we be brave to put our boat in the water? And that might be with our own families, our own friends, to have a conversation about this. To know that any little bit that balances our heart and mind towards this commitment of non-harming, towards the ability to listen intently, is for the good. It's for the good. And this is overwhelming. And this is bigger than all of us. Emma.
Hi, I just wanted to sort of add a neurodiverse person to the group, which is me. My bandwidth often seems a little bit more limited than holistic people. So, especially with the ongoing situation in Ukraine and in Palestine, etc., I just feel like I can't take it in, and it's something that I've really had to learn what you were saying about it's okay sometimes to not, be fully present and aware with what's happening, because if you physically and mentally can't take it in, that's okay. Because I think a lot of the practices guide us towards that awareness and sense of presence, and there shouldn't be aversion as well. But sometimes it is, like you say, insurmountable, and you'll get burnt out, and then you can't put your boat in the water. So
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that wisdom that you have inside of you that says, this is how my nervous system works, and I'm going to listen to that, and I'm going to show up as I can. But the fundamental commitment to not cause harm is towards ourself. Because when we train in not harming ourselves, it flows out to not harming others, and also the ability, that compassion that says we are all different and we are all in this very difficult world, and it is an ongoing trauma. It's an ongoing open wound that all of us are living in. So when your wisdom says, nope, I'm going to pull back, you do. You do, because that is putting your boat in your own water. So it is not all about the outward expression towards others, because we have to, I mean, you've heard the expression, put your own oxygen mask on first. And you can trust that, Emma. That's really important.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that because as a reflection personally, I've been meditating for about 10 years plus, and it feels like it's taken a really long time to get here and to sort of work through a lot of the shame and guilt that I still feel when I feel like other and like I can't do things that I really want to in regards to this, like keeping your heart open or so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so thank you so much for sharing this with us, Heidi.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Keep taking good care of yourself.
You
It's really
too.
important. Thank you. Jane.
Let me lower my hand.
There you go.
Hello,
Hi.
Heidi. Really lovely to meet you and to be with you today. I guess I have a few things. One, I just want to say, I think for me, it's really important for me to always be very connected to what does my body need? What is it telling me? And what can I do to help my nervous system, my body deal with what's going on in the world and what's really happening inside me, and then what do I need? And
Yep.
so I think it's constantly being very attuned to what messages I'm getting from internally,
Totally.
and
Totally
what
right.
do I then need to do to be compassionate towards myself. It's got to start here, and then it
You're
can
right.
expand out.
100% right. So, in this first foundation of mindfulness, mindfulness of the body, in this fathom long body, said the Buddha, everything will be revealed. And our training is to listen and trust the body, because you're right, the body is telling us. And how often do we override it, right? Because the mind will just convince us of anything. Totally shameless. So listening in, and my hunch is, when you feel strong, when we have capacity, and when you need to pull back.
Mhm.
And this is a practice of listening and responding appropriately like that.
So my question to you, or my curiosity, I've been meditating all my life, so it's been a lot of years. And I'm also Jewish. And I'm just wondering what you have found the interconnection between your Jewishness and your Buddhism, and I'm just curious about that because I've tried to explain that to other folks that are Jewish, and it's like they think I'm being weird or whatever, or whatever. I don't care what they think, but I'm just curious how you have found that
Yeah,
the
great
interplay
question.
between the two of these things. Yeah.
It's a really beautiful and important question, and it has a really long answer. So, but I want to tell you that what I have found is that they're not in conflict with each other at all. Right? You know that. Look at you. Like, this is not in conflict. To cultivate awareness, kindness, and the wisdom that arises from that is across all wisdom traditions. Don't harm each other. Don't harm yourself. Don't take each other's stuff. Train in generosity. Be careful with the language that you use. Let it come from a kind heart. Do not exploit people with your language or your sexuality, and be moderate in what you consume. Those are the precepts, the Buddhist lay precepts, but I think they apply to just humanity. That is what it means to be, that's ethical alignment. So having a Jewish background is completely in consort with that. There is no problem at all. That's what I tell people. And what I do tell people is, yes, I am Jewish and I love Buddhist practices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're
Oh, that's so
welcome.
beautiful. And I think there's a real interplay between the two. The
Yeah.
values and ethics are so interplayed. And it's a dance. It's a beautiful
It
dance that
is.
comes together with what I grew up
And you get to
experiencing.
have that be your expression. They are not in conflict with each other. Not
Thank you
at
so
all.
much. Greatly
Thank you.
appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you,
Stay
Jane.
well. Peace and
Thank you,
gratitude to
Jane.
you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I don't know a lot about the Bodhisattva, but I've always felt very drawn to it, to compassion to all living beings. Sometimes some things are confusing, though. For example, in some traditions, it does not seem to be important. Like my friend in, let's see, this thing is just getting in the way. Oh, okay. In the Mahasi tradition, awakening seems to be more for yourself. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Or confusing to feel a lot of compassion for the suffering of others, and then at times to see so clearly that everything is okay, and that in some ways this suffering is an illusion, even if it's there. Okay. Let's talk about these different lineages. This is important. This is how I understand the difference between the Theravada lineage and the Mahayana lineage. It is true, the Mahasi tradition, which comes out of Theravada insight meditation, what we're practicing here, you will find over and over again that I got to get the picture of myself off the screen because I'm giant. I'm just talking to myself here. So let me go back, gallery view. Okay, there we go. You will find in Theravada tradition that there seems to be an emphasis on the individual awakening and the individual end to suffering. And the Theravada tradition, it started in North India and moved down into Southeast Asia to Burma, to Myanmar, Sri Lanka, in that area. And it happened, the Theravada lineage was finally written down about 250 years after the Buddha's death, and it's known as the Path of the Elders. Mahayana went the other way. The diaspora went north to China, Tibet, Japan, Korea, and this is Vajrayana, Tibetan, and Zen. And it is true that the path of the Bodhisattva comes out of the Mahayana tradition that one is going to keep, the Bodhisattva might be awakened, meet awakening, but isn't going to leave this life until all beings are awakened, till all suffering has ended. So I think that is the difference of the two lineages. But if you really dive into this, I don't think there's a difference. That we can split hairs about the Bodhisattva comes from the Mahayana tradition and is interested in the well-being of all beings. But it also, my understanding, is that in the Mahayana, it was believed that the Buddha was a divine being, like a god. In the Theravada tradition, the Buddha was a regular person who understood suffering and the end of suffering and was awakened. But he didn't stop helping people. Even in his own awakening, he continued to do this work to help to teach people about how they can be free of suffering, which is the path of the Bodhisattva. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that we don't need to be so concerned about, is it for me or is it for everybody? Because of the truth of interconnection, the truth of karma. Everything is connected to everything else. So if you come to these moments of awakening, it is going to benefit everybody around you. It can't not, because everything is connected to everything. And then to the point of, is suffering an illusion? I'm pretty pragmatic, and so I want to be careful in how I meet that question. I don't think suffering is an illusion. I think it's happening, and we don't have to look too far to see it. So in our regular, everyday, walking around secular lives, suffering is not an illusion. Maybe in those deeper moments of samadhi, when we can see the causes of our suffering, and we can see how we can disentangle from that feels like an illusion. But I want to be careful about how to meet that. Because what I love about this practice is it is so practical, and it really helps me in my daily, everyday life. So I hope that was an okay answer to the difference in these lineages. We don't need to expose ourselves to the details of cruelty in order to aim for compassion and wise action. Absolutely right, Suvi. And that's what I mean about let's really protect the heart. Let's not overexpose. Because what that's doing is traumatizing. I was listening to a talk recently in the last couple of days from Jack Kornfield, and you can get it on his Be Here Now network. I believe that's where it is. And he was quoting somebody, I have to look it up, but this was a very important view of how do we meet this suffering. And it was somebody who is either Palestinian or Israeli, and I'm sorry that I don't know right now, who was talking about the incredible pain that those who are affected are feeling. Palestinians, Israelis, Ukrainians, Russians, anybody who is living inside of a war. And we think, can't you just stop killing each other? Can't you just stop and listen to each other? But the answer is no, because the pain is so great that when you are the one who is inside, the recipient of the violence, the trauma is so overwhelming that how does one who is receiving the violence have that perspective? Oh, let's just sit down and listen to each other. And what is needed is for all of us who are outside of the immediate violence to hold this empathy, to cultivate this compassion. Because we need to build this enormous, I think, cushion of empathy around all of those who are living in violence by committing not to let hate take up residence in us, to let the violence stop with us. So our capacity that is growing will be there for others when they need it. Does this make sense to you? It's a really important piece. Bartek says, and let me back up a little bit. Joseph Goldstein says, there's no right and wrong in the Dharma, but it's right and wrong that is wrong. Okay, yeah, thank you. And Bartek, in my opinion, suffering is just our resistance to what is happening. Yeah, because pain plus resistance equals suffering. Pain is more related to physical discomfort. I think we need to distinguish here a difference. Yeah, okay. So what is the difference between physical pain and existential pain, heart pain? There is a difference, for sure. Physical pain is normal, right, Bartek? Like, we live in a body, and things are going to happen, and we are going to go through cycles of illness and wellness, or we're going to fall down and break a leg. We're going to have physical pain because the body is alive. Our relationship to that pain is really important because difficulty is going to happen, but it's what we do in relationship to that difficulty. So we can fight it, and that creates the suffering. And that's, you can get a cold, you can get some illness. It's not wrong. It's just naturally living in a body. But the heart pain that is caused when we harm each other, that's a different kind of pain. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the pain of my view versus your view versus somebody else's view, the need to be right, the truth of being wrong, the experience of that, power, struggle, how power is used to hurt people. That's what we're talking about, I think, in our practice. The pain of the body is just simply true. The pain of the heart we need to work with and we need to train in. I hope that's an adequate response. We could talk about this all day. And this is why we keep coming back to practice over and over and over again, to understand it more deeply. Lawrence, this will be our last question. There you go.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just say that for me, suffering is the first noble truth, and we're human.
Yep.
I have a friend who loves to remind me when I complain about things, and I'm like, this is just me, and this is my learning disabilities, which I have, and she'll go like, no, everybody, it's human.
It is.
So, and so much is coming up. I just want to thank you and Jane for acknowledging your Jewishness, which I also am, and just say to everyone, but especially my Jewish brothers and sisters in this Sangha and everywhere in the world, this is just, I don't know how some people live without a practice at this time. It's just all I want. I just thank you to you and Jane for acknowledging your Jewishness. I am Jewish, and not in our names is all I see those demonstrations and those T-shirts and rabbis standing up and screaming, and may the practice support you and support us, and thank you for your sharing and your Sangha talk.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. May we all move through this time with as little, may the violence end, and all the pain that Jewish people are feeling does not discount the pain that Palestinians are feeling, because
absolutely.
It is awful. And so this piece of that, those who are in the middle of the violence, they're just trying to survive. And it's up to us in this greater circle to try to have more capacity, more clarity, and to really cultivate what this practice is teaching us. And you're right about we are lucky to have this practice. It really does support us. It really does. It's a big deal. Okay, I think...
Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Faith.
Yes.
Is there an ending ritual that we have, or to offer up the benefit, a dedication of merit?
If you would like to, we don't have something at Sangha Live, but it's up to each teacher. Otherwise, we just bid each other all goodbye, and everyone's invited to open their mics. But if you would like to.
I would. I would.
Please offer the merits.
I will.
Please offer the merits.
I will. I will offer the merits. So for anybody who doesn't know, the merits is the goodness of our practice. We dedicate and we offer up the goodness of our efforts, because we know this takes effort. It takes effort to keep coming back over and over again to a dedication of seeing clearly, even when it's painful. So we offer up the goodness of our efforts so that all beings everywhere, omitting none, have enough to eat, have adequate shelter, have access to health care, are part of a welcoming community, so that all of this pain and suffering can be eased. And we are included in all beings. Thank you very much, everybody. Such a pleasure to be here. Be well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace
Thank
and
you so much.
gratitude and
Thank
love
you,
to
Heidi.
everybody.
Thank you.